Really quite offensive, because in reality, many people with schizophrenia find that cannabis is the only thing that helps deal with the other symptoms of schizophrenia, the anxiety, the tension, the pointlessness of their lives. So they, even though they know it makes some symptoms worse, they still use it because the net benefit is positive. And I think we should be very cautious about blaming people for using cannabis just because doctors think it makes things worse. It may not in other areas of their illness.
There's no doubt that as far as children or young people are concerned, while your brain's still growing and developing, any substance you take that's psychoactive is potentially harmful. I mean, that's self-evident, it's common sense.
Do you think most drug dealers care about age restrictions or like how stable someone is?
Not really. I think the overall view is that you're just sort of fishing for money really, and whenever you get a bite, you just pull no matter what.
Sensibly determining how you might use the drug is actually quite difficult when it's illegal.
What we desperately need is a regulated system.
But there's another question about skunk which people get quite exercised about. People think that because it's stronger, it will necessarily have more effect in the brain. Well, that's true, of course, if you smoke the same amount. But the analogy I would make is the difference between, say, beer and wine. So wine is usually 3 times as strong as beer. But people don't necessarily get more drunk on wine because they don't necessarily drink this. You know, if you drank a pint of wine, then you get more drunk. But most people know the strength and therefore moderate their intake.
Seems like common sense. But alcohol and tobacco kill millions every year globally. So how many does cannabis kill?
1,000 people?
Yep, less than 100, more than 50.
100,000?
Every day of the week, people die of cannabis.
100,000.
It's been said 1,000,000 times before, but we'll say it again.
No one, we think, has ever died of smoking cannabis.
So the therapeutic ratio of cannabis, in other words, how much you have to take to kill yourself, is absurd. I mean, you know, you'd have to consume so much that it would just be ridiculous.
Cannabis is less harmful than alcohol and tobacco, yet for possession you can face a maximum of 5 years in prison and an unlimited fine. Cannabis is very much illegal, yet everything that isn't actually cannabis itself, but cannabis related, is entirely legal. We're here in Camden Town, one of the thousands of places in the UK selling bongs, grinders, baggies, stash boxes, rolling papers, all for smoking cannabis. And they're not even trying to hide it. So we've just come from one of the shops on Camden Road and we've got some smoking rolling papers here. They've got, this one's got like small cannabis designs along here. They're both pure hemp, so they're actually made from cannabis. And we've also got a grinder which has got, I don't know if you can see that, a little cannabis leaf there. So obviously what you do is you put your cannabis in here and just grind it up. And there's no real other use for this really. I mean, you could use it for grinding up herbs in your kitchen, but it's got a cannabis leaf on the front. And yeah, it was just, I just walked in and put my money on the table and they were given to me really.
But these are for people who smoke cannabis. Surely those who grow it will be less obvious. Well, not really. In fact, you can buy everything you need to grow cannabis from your high street, even the seeds.
Well, this is a grow shop, yeah?
Yeah.
And you can find here everything, pretty much everything that you need to grow your favorite plants at home.
Okay.
Yeah, any equipment, lighting, ventilation, growing media.
What's the attraction to growing indoors for people? Why do they do it?
Mainly in this country that you cannot rely much on the daylight.
Yeah,
on the weather. On the weather, yeah. So growing indoors is an alternative to have pretty much any type of plants.
Okay.
Tropical plants, anything that you want.
Okay. So you can
have
just grow any plant you want indoors.
Exactly.
Okay, alright, well we've got loads more stuff over here. We've got big bags of Canna Terra Professional Plus. The name Canna that we've got written on some of this soil, where does that come from?
Well, it's a Dutch company, yeah, so I believe that's like a marketing thing to attract more customers.
Okay, so the people who might be wanting to grow this.
Yeah, but people might associate with some type
Some
of plants.
plants.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And then next to it, this big thing here, it's a carbon filter. What?
That's a carbon filter, exactly.
they use
It works
for?
in line with the extractor.
Yeah.
So the extractor is going to be sucking the air out of the tanks through the carbon filter,
Okay.
and when the air passes here, it's going to kill all the smell.
Kill all the smell.
Yeah.
Okay, so people don't want the plant smell getting around their
Yes,
house.
plants that smell strong, when the air comes out from the other end of the extractor, it's going to be clean. This is a complete setup. It's a controlled environment for you to grow your plants. You got pretty much everything here. The tent with reflective material inside to have less waste of electricity and light. You have here a carbon filter, like that one to kill the smell. Here on top of the tent is the extractor,
So this is
reflector light.
This is the whole kit.
It's the whole kit.
Everything you need to start growing. So
Yeah,
how much would this kind of setup cost someone if they wanted to start?
About £300 you can start
And
growing.
that's for everything.
Everything, including even soil and fertilizer. That's organic setup from £300.
Big question. I'm just going to come out and say it. We've been to a lot of cannabis grow-ups, and the equipment that you sell here is pretty much identical to the stuff that we see over there. Does that surprise you at all that people are using this kind of equipment to grow cannabis?
It doesn't surprise me. I don't really talk to my customers about what they're growing.
You just
Sometimes when they come to me and say, I want to grow. Well, you know what I want to grow. I said, I don't know, and I don't want to, mate. I can give advice on how to grow plants in general.
Yeah, but
I cannot give advice in any illegal activity. Pretty much all grow shops, they have a copy of this magazine.
So all the hydroponic grow shops?
Yeah.
Okay.
Soon after you open the magazine, you're gonna see the page 3 girl.
Jamaican Dream is our page 3 girl. You can see just the amount of legitimate businesses. We've got a seed company advertising here. We've got, this is a little thing to set up your indoor closet grows. This is like how to convert. We've got some people posing by plants. There's this whole cannabis culture, and it's underground, but it's well established. So it seems that cannabis is definitely part of the business, I suppose. Or that you understand that people are going to be buying stuff.
You cannot be naive saying that no, people don't come here to buy equipment to grow their own weed.
Yeah.
You cannot be naive at this point, but we cannot support this as well.
Okay. You can do everything but give them advice about weed. You can sell them everything they need.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So, this is a legitimate business. They've got a stock room, they're selling stuff online and in a physical shop to just people who want to be growing for all sorts of reasons. There are obviously people who are going to be wanting to grow cannabis here. But, it's all legitimate and it's all getting taxed, and, there's nothing shady about any of this. We've got this called Cannaboost, and it's nutrition for your cannabis plant. It's designed for cannabis, and I presume it's being bought by people growing cannabis. And it's completely legitimate. Like, we've got quite an intelligent design for the packaging. We've got a little extra bit here so you can measure out how much you need to put in your plant at each time. So we're just getting a cup of tea in the cannabis grow shop. I'm a little bit shocked, I'm going to have to admit. This is not what I expected. I expected to come and it to be some dodgy guy selling some dodgy stuff at dodgy prices to some dodgy people, but in fact it's this lovely guy and his wife who just set up their first business, and a lot of the stuff's going to people who are growing cannabis, and they're not doing anything wrong, and it's quite strange, I suppose, just to be in a room where this is going to go to a cannabis grower. That's probably going to go to a cannabis grower. These lights are probably going to go to a cannabis grower, but it's okay. Looking through all of this stuff, like I totally get why people would want to grow. Like, I thought, it'd be so cool to just get some of this and just grow some peppers or something, but then it's like 300 quid for a setup, and I'm not paying 300 quid to grow some peppers.
You'd get fat peppers.
Yeah, you'd get the best peppers in the world.
Yeah.
You'd get incredible peppers, but they'd still just be peppers.
Very good peppers.
Amazing peppers. Right, so you've got products in here with the word like canna on them and all these nutrients that are designed for cannabis growing, and you can sell it all legally and all your customers are allowed to buy it, but where does the law say no, this is now illegal? Where's the cut-off point?
Well, the law says that you cannot germinate one cannabis seed. You can buy all your equipment, you can buy all your fertilizers, but you cannot germinate your seed. You can buy your seed, but you cannot germinate.
So as soon as you put your seed in the soil and add some water,
then you become a criminal.
So, you've just bought your first hemp clothes. Well done, you're not a criminal. You've just bought a bong to smoke some weed out of. You're still not a criminal. You've just bought everything you need to grow cannabis, even the seeds. Well done, you're an upstanding citizen. You set up everything and it's all in place ready for growing. Well done, you're still not a criminal. You get one of your seeds and you put it in some soil. What made you think you could do that? It's clear we're in an odd situation here. But the problem is, we can't stop people growing cannabis if they really want to, no matter what their intentions are.
I'm not suggesting that there ought to be a complete free-for-all. It is a psychoactive substance, you know. I mean, if you abuse it, it can cause harm, just like if you abuse anything.
There are certain people that shouldn't use cannabis, but generally speaking, prohibition doesn't help these people in the way a regulated system would. Cannabis is a Class B drug, which leads most of us to believe it's pretty dangerous. It's obvious then that any idea of medical benefits goes out the window.
Cannabis is probably the oldest medicine. We think it's been used in medicinal practice for over 4,000 years. It does many things.
Queen Victoria famously used a tincture of cannabis for her menstrual pains.
And it was perfectly accepted throughout society. It was prescribed for people with asthma, all sorts of treatments it was used for, and now it's not accepted at all.
The history of cannabis in medicine in Britain is a really sad one. It was a legal medicine until 1971. And then a couple of GPs in London who were very pro-cannabis, they started prescribing it for non-medicinal reasons. They started giving it to people, and it was then in a liquid form. And they said, drop the liquid onto your cigarettes and smoke it. So they were trying to make cannabis legal, and they subverted medicinal cannabis for pleasure. And the government then reacted, as many governments do, completely overreacted, irrationally, and it banned medicinal cannabis to stop what was a trivial diversion of medicinal cannabis onto the market. And the government said, well, if we ban cannabis medicines, we'll stop people using cannabis. Now, in 1971, about 500,000 of the 50 million people in Britain had ever tried cannabis. It gets banned. 40 years down the line, almost half of the people in Britain have used cannabis. So the ban had no impact on use. But what it did do was mean that people who needed cannabis for medicinal purposes ended up getting criminalised.
There must be tens of thousands of people in this country, possibly even as many as 100,000 people using cannabis for medicinal purposes.
Although not willing to be interviewed for this report, Home Office ministers worry the drug is addictive and increases the risk of psychosis. Cannabis, they conclude, has no medical benefit in herbal form.
The government's position is completely absurd. I mean, there's no other word for it. You know, they say that there are no medicinal benefits in cannabis, yet on the other hand, they've recently approved Sativex, which is cannabis. They've dressed it up in a physical package and a marketing package to try and pretend, if you like, that they say it's a cannabis-based medicine. You know, they say it's an extract of two cannabinoids, THC and CBD. You know, but in actual fact, what it is technically, it's what's called a cannabis tincture. And all that happens is they take herbal cannabis, chop it up finely, soak it in alcohol, heat it gently. They then filter the result and call it Sativex. But Sativex is cannabis.
It's hardly being used at all because it's expensive, and it's not on what we call formularies for most hospitals or for most general practices. But at least now people can have that prescribed.
Although Sativex is a step in the right direction, it's far from the legal cannabis you see in California or Holland. The problem with cannabis is that it works best in its natural form, and you can't patent a plant. This means that pharmaceutical companies can't make money from it because people would just grow it themselves. Sativex make their money by processing cannabis, making it more expensive and less beneficial. And who does this affect most? The patients.
This is the UK's first medical cannabis testimonial. My name is Sara Martin. I have relapsing remitting MS, which I treat quite successfully by using cannabis.
We went to meet Sarah.
cannabis takes away enough of the symptom to make life bearable. I'm not stiff, I'm not cramping. A lot of the pins and needles has been taken away. That's one of the most annoying symptoms. The numbness recedes a little bit. That allows me to think, wow, things actually feel great again, you know? And that's cannabis that does that.
Illegal cannabis. However, Sarah was nice enough to invite us and our cameras into her grow room.
Where's the goddamn key? Yeah, that's it. Different plants completely.
Smells like Kew Gardens.
I grow my own cannabis because I'm given no choice. If I didn't grow, I'd have to buy street cannabis, which is frequently contaminated. All the powerful nutrients that they feed them with have not been properly flushed from the plant, and I'd be ingesting that substance or breathing it into my lungs. So I grow my own, so I can ensure the clean medicinal quality of the plant. Only a 400 watt light, nothing fancy.
And how much did this cost you to set up all of it together?
Tent's 100, lights 150, maybe less. Plants are free, all donated seeds.
If Sarah didn't grow her own cannabis, she'd have to go to the streets to get her medicine.
Wherever it comes from is never necessarily known, and obviously its growing conditions and strains are never as well known as they could be.
The imperative for some sort of regulation of medicinal cannabis is urgent. It's not about my selfish, recreational activity, the fact that I like getting stoned. It's about the fact that there are people out there in pain and suffering, in desperate need of the relief that cannabis offers them.
I use cannabis because it eases all the symptoms associated with MS without the horrific side effects that many pharmaceuticals provide.
Cannabis is almost always safer than the pharmaceutical alternatives.
My consultant neurologist doesn't even like me to use pharmaceuticals. They've never been recommended to me by a consultant neurologist because they are all aware of how harmful they can be.
One of the reasons cannabis is a safe drug is that it cannot kill you an overdose. Unlike alcohol, where 4 times the driving limit can result in death.
Prescription drugs in Britain may be responsible for 1,200 deaths per year.
My doctor, she gave me some antispasm pills that I still have upstairs. That she said, take them as an absolute last resort, and I never have. Because the way she said it just said to me, these are dangerous. Only take them if you really need to.
And what do your doctors think about you using cannabis?
I get support, full support. It makes me healthy and they see it. I go and see them, they can see me healthy. And yet they can't recommend cannabis because of the law.
Sarah's not the only one. There's a surprisingly big community online of medical cannabis users.
Even though people like me had the courage to stand up and say, look, I'm helping people, I'm growing cannabis, I put it in the post and blah blah blah, the police didn't come and drag me into a cell. Nobody from government phoned and said, what are you doing? They just went, oh, don't make a fuss, maybe she'll go away.
Yeah.
And I frankly cannot see any reason why people shouldn't smoke cannabis to help them if it does help them.
Well, you don't have to smoke it. I mean, obviously you can eat it, you can take it transdermally, you can create an ointment or a gel which can be rubbed on the skin. It can be rubbed directly, if it's for muscular pains or something, it can be rubbed directly on the area which hurts or is inflamed. The other technique is vaporizing.
Blows hot air, 190 degrees centigrade, and that just encourages a vapor from the plant. Absolutely no combustion whatsoever. And a little mouthpiece goes on.
What would you do without cannabis?
I wouldn't bother living.
It's ridiculous for a drug which is as pretty harmless as cannabis not to be available for people who have medical need.
it's unjust, it's cruel, it's more than cruel, it's evil, and something's got to be done about it.
All walks of society use cannabis. We don't look like anything or anybody. We look like everyone.
We've done 3 months worth of research for this film, and it's still not clear to us yet why we put ourselves at such a disadvantage, both medically and industrially, in terms of cannabis, just to stop a few people getting high.
In a world at the minute where there is no money, we keep being told, as it were, and we all owe a shitload. Growing a big old farm of green and selling it as a cash crop with the tax there, that could fucking bail out a lot of people.
So we're in a strange situation where everyone knows that the law is wrong, but no one has the courage to say the law is wrong, let's change it. So you have this sort of kind of ratchet effect with each of the two major parties trying to out-muscle the other on being article because they think that will give them some votes. In practice it probably doesn't, but they've got stuck in that mindset. They cannot think clearly about it.
Cannabis gives me a way to live.
All we need is some clarity. We need some clarity and some truth, and then the benefits